And action!
Hello and welcome to episode 243 of the Filmmakers podcast. This is a podcast where we talk filmmaking, from indie film to studio films to high-end TV and everything in between. How to get them made, how to make them, and how to try not to F it up, in our very, very humble opinion. I'm Giles Alderson. I'm a writer, director and a producer, and I'm delighted to tell you that on this week's episode we have some of the team behind Chevalier. This is a brand new feature film from Searchlight Pictures and Element Pictures, directed by Stephen Williams, who is our first guest on today's bumper edition. Chevalier is the story. It's a true story of composer Joseph Bologna, who was a Chevalier de Saint Georges. Basically, he was the illegitimate son of an African slave and a French plantation owner who rises to heights in French society as a composer before an ill-fated love affair. The film stars Alec Newman, Henry Lloyd Hughes, Cyan Clifford of The Serial Killer's Guide to Life fame, Minnie Driver, Samara Weaving, Lucy Boynton and Kelvin Harrison Jr. The latter two are also on this week's podcast. Yeah, that's right, Lucy Boynton and Kelvin Harrison Jr. Lucy has starred in Bohemian Rhapsody and Murder on the Orient Express, and Kelvin Harrison Jr. has starred in Elvis and The Trial of the Chicago 7, making his second appearance on the podcast after he came on to talk about Cyrano. But first of all, we have director Stephen Williams. He's directed many episodes of TV, including Lost. He did 26 episodes. He was also the co-executive producer. He also directed Undercovers, The Transporter, Intelligence, Matador, Agent Carter, The Americans, The Returned, Hand of God, The Walking Dead, How to Get Away with Murder, Bloodline, Ray Donovan, Westworld, and Watchmen, which he was also executive producer on. His last feature film that he directed was Shadow Zone, My Teacher Ate My Homework, in 1997, which we talk about on the podcast, but he is back making another feature film since then with Chevalier. What do myself and fellow host Dom Lenoir talk about on this week's podcast with Stephen? We talk about why you need to tailor the text as a director when you're not the screenwriter, why you're only as good as your collaborators, how to be subtly manipulative, and why Stephen used screen grabs to inspire his crew. He also talks why he directed TV and how he met JJ Abrams, why you should hold out to make the film you want to make rather than taking work as a director for hire, and he gives you some amazing advice. And that's coming up for you on this week's episode of the Filmmakers podcast. So I am doing a workshop for actors, working with directors. If you happen to be up in Lincolnshire, if you happen to be in the Grimsby area, the Lincolnshire area, I'm up there on Saturday the 24th of June doing this workshop for Lee Waddingham's brilliant acting links. So if you're around, do come along. Link to that is in the show notes. Don't let a door close on you this week. Basically, a rejection happened to me and it got me down. I wallowed for maybe an hour and then I got over it. And I thought, I'm not going to let that stop me. I've had so many of those, but this one just hurt, just niggled at me and just got me. But I thought, I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm going to kick the door down. And you should do the same. I don't mean literally, like James Cameron style, like how he did when he was pitching Terminator. Look it up, it's pretty amazing. I mean, for you, don't let anyone stop you doing what you need to do. And if that means going out of your way to make something happen and kick that door down, literally or metaphorically, then do it. Do it. It's your life. Only you can make things happen. Believe in yourself and get it done. So that's what I mean when I say don't let a door close on you. Next week on the podcast, we have another Stephen. That's right, we have Transformers Rise of the Beasts director Stephen Capel Jr. and also two more actors. We have In the Heights and Hamilton actor Anthony Ramos and Judas and the Black Messiah actress Dominique Fishback talking about their experience making Transformers. That's for you next week. So let's get to it. First up, Stephen Williams, the fantastic director of Chevalier, and then after we've chatted to Stephen, we'll be chatting with the actors, the lead actors of Chevalier, Lucy Boynton and Calvin Harrison Jr. Sit back, relax, enjoy. Stephen, so nice to meet you. How you doing?
Good, man. Thank you so much for jumping on this Zoom. Appreciate it.
Of course we would.
We're excited to chat to you. Very excited.
Very excited indeed. We chatted earlier to Calvin and to Lucy as well, your stars
amazing.
of
Excellent.
the show. And that was in person. It was so nice, obviously, to chat to them.
Really?
Yeah. You are the phantom Zoomer, which we love.
Yes. I'm jealous, though. I wish I were there.
Yes.
I mean, the pandemic really kind of has spoiled us in this weird kind of way. You know, you used to actually have to get dressed and shave and, jump in a car, certainly in LA, and now it's kind of like, just a few clicks on the keyboard and there you are.
Yes.
And we're away. Yeah.
And we're away. Well done, by the way. Look, Chevalier is really stunning piece of filmmaking, and especially the topic of what it is as well. It's fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much. That's
no problem. Yeah, talk to us about how it came to you, how it came about, and the process behind making Chevalier.
So our film Chevalier is about a formerly little-known, highly accomplished classical musical composer and conductor and champion fencer and equestrian and general man about town and friend of Marie Antoinette's in the pre-revolutionary France. Yes. And very little has actually been written about this person, Joseph Bologna, the title person in our film Chevalier. There is a book called The Sword and the Bow, but our movie was really trying not to be so much a kind of cradle to grave biopic as it was a kind of, we picked a section of Joseph's life because it was so rich. You could literally make 6 movies about this guy and not exhaust his biography. And so we chose to just kind of focus on a small but transformative and pivotal period in his life. And I knew nothing about him. Weirdly, I knew absolutely nothing about Joseph Bologna at all until one fateful morning I was kind of going through my emails, and lo and behold, in my inbox was a copy of the script that had been sent to me by Searchlight Pictures, and I started reading and was immediately captivated and hooked, and that sent me off on a really long journey of educating myself about this person and the time period in which he lived.
So once you've received the script, how do you kind of look at it and think, okay, well, what do I want to keep that's in there? What do I want to change? After you sort of do your own research, and then you've also got your own sort of directorial ideas and spins, how close to that script did the sort of the final movie end up being, and what was it that you maybe thought, okay, this is amazing, but I'd like to sort of imprint this or focus a bit more on this section or this character?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, certainly for me, but I think it's probably true for most directors who aren't also writers of their material. At some point you have to kind of find a way to tailor the text in such a way as to allow you to visualize it in the way that you want to visualize the film. So one of the first things that occurred to me was I wanted to kind of develop a visual vocabulary and grammar that would immerse the viewer in the immediacy of the life journey of the titular character, Joseph Bologna. And so that meant for me that he had to be in every single scene. So the first kind of imposition that I made, if you will, on the text was that there could be no scene that Joseph was not in. And for the most part, I was able to, adhere to that. And then, I just wanted to find a way to kind of yoke the viewer to the subjective journey of this character. And that meant for me a lot of long takes because I felt that there was something, just something more immersive about, a kind of, kind of quasi Birdman approach to visualizing this film. I wanted it to not feel like a typical kind of period piece that you see, like, you know, masterpiece theater. You're looking through a kind of time portal at some kind of distanced remove from the events and the characters that are happening in the film or unfolding during the course of the movie. I wanted there to be a sense of immediacy and urgency. I wanted the viewer to feel as if they were there in that time.
And you absolutely have as well. It does feel that way. You feel like you're diving into this wonderful world. And I really love the status and characters that came across as well. And that was magical at times. And that was done with camera work as to who was status, who was in control, who was strong, who wasn't at times. And it was really beautiful to watch. Do you go into your work, I mean, on this film with Jess Hall as well, your cinematographer, but do you go into depth with that from the very beginning? Do you start thinking about how you'd shoot it? Even when you get in that script in the first place, do things pop in your mind and go, oh, that would be nice?
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, that's, you know, look, it needs to be said. It's been said before, but it needs to be reiterated that no director authors a piece by him or herself. You are only as good as the collaborators that you are fortunate or blessed enough to surround yourself with. And I have to tell you, this movie only kind of coalesced and came together once, you know, we got the band together. Yes. And, you know, Jess Hall is just an amazing DP. Karen Murphy, who has done movies like, you know, A Star is Born and Queen and Slim, and, you know, a ton of work with Baz Luhrmann, Olivier, our, you know, costume designer. All of us were working together as a unit, and we're trying to find a way to visually reinforce all of the kind of emotional and narrative beats of the story. And those discussions were intense, intimate, and began literally from the minute we all became familiar with the script. And so, yeah, you're totally right. There are images that start to anchor your plan of attack or your approach as soon as you start flipping through the script, even on the first read. And so those conversations were in depth and detail, really, really detailed. And our camera operator, by the way, a guy called Jeff Healy, he's just an amazingly intuitive artist with the camera. And you know, it was just a wonderful, unique experience. We all kind of were different instruments in the orchestration of this piece about this incredible musician.
Like what you did there.
Yes, I did that deliberately. I know.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
It's a bit cringy, but I couldn't resist.
But actually, sort of, you know, leading on to that, like the camera is so fluid. And it does, you know, almost sort of just guides you like a very seamless piece of music through, you know, the music and the visuals are both so smooth that it really does sort of flow you through with the, you know, the pace of the film and the drama and also the era and the sort of the lavishness. I sort of mentioned that word again, but you know, the sets are absolutely incredible. Did you in terms of like working with your production designer, how did that collaboration sort of work to create such a stunning sort of backdrop to it all?
Yeah, you know, I mean, so the trick for me, the most kind of, I think, challenging piece tonally, right, and visually was, how do you make it feel like, you know, it's worth reminding ourselves that we're telling a story about the trajectory of this musical revolutionary, right? And him coming into a greater sense of self-awareness. And, you know, it was about how do you balance the kind of very kind of contemporary tonality of the piece, i.e. wanting the viewer to feel as if they were immersed in the events at the time, while maintaining some kind of honor and respect for the time period in which the piece took place. So that was like the kind of overarching mandate for us, how to be subtly contemporary. And Karen Murphy, our production designer, I mean, I literally can't say enough about her. She's just brilliant. And she embraced working in the way in which I wanted to work, which was, as production designer, she is the umbrella over all the visual kind of elements that appear that are going to be photographed. So she worked completely in tandem with Jess, our DP, but also with Olivier, our costume designer, and all the set decorators. And nothing kind of made its way onto set and to my eyes until it had been filtered through Karen's vision, which allowed for the piece to have a certain kind of coherence, which I was, desperate to try to achieve. And so she was just a pivotal ally and collaborator.
Yeah, well, she obviously with Elvis as well. That it felt.
Yeah, Elvis, I forgot that.
But
yeah.
I mean, in terms of her visualization of stuff, A Star Is Born, Elvis, and then Chevalier, you can totally see how that would make sense and how it would work. But were you showing them storyboards? Were you showing them these images that popped up in your mind? How do you grab those, and what is it that you actually do present?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am a voracious consumer of movies. I've been a movie addict since as far back as I can remember. Again, not an original utterance from a director, but nonetheless true. And so I literally would do screen grabs of like every movie that I felt spoke to what we were trying to achieve, even if on the surface of things it didn't necessarily appear to be related to what we were after. There are sequences from, for example, The Graduate. I will in the context of this podcast, like, completely fess up to, there's a montage that happens kind of midway through the movie as Joseph Bologna, our hero, is setting about composing and rehearsing and putting together an opera, Ernestine, that was, curiously enough, written, by the way, by Monsieur Laclos, who wrote Dangerous Liaison, like the original Stephen Frears movie, but like the book of letters on which that movie was based.
Yes.
He wrote the libretto to Joseph Bologna's Ernestine. In any event, that there's a montage that Mike Nichols just so brilliantly kind of constructed in The Graduate that I used as inspiration for our montage, our Ernestine montage. So I would show that to our camera operator, to Jess, to Karen, and we then literally shot that montage to the bar. So there's no extraneous footage that doesn't exist. Like, it was literally, like, editorially speaking, it was cut the head and tails off those takes, put them together, and that's the montage. So I just had a storehouse of references, visual references, and I would literally be able to go, this scene wants to feel like this still grab, this still frame from X, Y, or Z movie. And we would, then that would become alchemically transformed by all the brilliance of the collaborators, and evolve and change and become suited to our purposes.
So you mentioned that you shot that sequence almost entirely as it was sort of planned. Can you talk about anything that maybe you had planned in the script that you didn't end up shooting in the end, or something that you shot which didn't make it into the final edit? Like, what sort of made it through and didn't make it through in terms of the sort of the final version? Maybe sort of some of the studio input, if that had any impact on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is going to be super boring to say, but again, it suffers from the virtue of being truthful, so I have to share it.
To honor it.
The studio Searchlight Pictures, they were like,
honorable as a Renaissance gentleman you are.
The studio did not interfere at all, but I will say they did have, strangely enough, this is going to sound even weirder, a couple of really useful and helpful notes. So the fencing sequence, right? That's early in the movie, when the sequence that leads to Joseph being appointed a Chevalier by Marie Antoinette. That sequence played out script-wise and in the first editorial passes in a very linear way, right? There was speech by Ponce, and then a speech by Joseph's best friend, and then the fencing duel. And at some point, someone at the studio was like, I wonder if there's a way to kind of approach this in a slightly more compressed and nonlinear way. And the light bulb went off when they offered that up, and it was in keeping with the kind of musical tonality that we wanted to achieve, and it was it continued the kind of race through Joseph's early time in France that we wanted to try to achieve, so as to avoid being a kind of traditional biopic, if you will, and so the non-linearity of that sequence was something that was offered up by the studio and was not in our original design. There are lots of, having said that, it's a very modest film in terms of budget and scope. It's, Searchlight Pictures, independent, is a, part of a studio, but it's an arm, a kind of indie arm, if you will, or indie vibe arm of a larger studio. And so, we didn't have tons of time to shoot. We didn't have tons of money. And so there's very little. At some point they came to me and was like, what deleted scenes do you want to include in the DVD extras? And there weren't.
You've got
a lot to choose from. So,
all of them.
Exactly.
I'll do a commentary.
New movie.
Exactly.
It's very refreshing to hear like how supportive the studio is, and that's really nice actually as filmmakers, like really positive, helpful notes, like working towards the same goal.
Yes.
Really they really were. I mean, I wish I had horror stories to share. In many ways, it'd be a lot more.
They probably don't.
Yes. Are you sure?
Yeah, exactly. But there was this one time. No.
It's interesting because like your last movie, right, was Shadow Zone. My teacher ate my homework in 1997. Yeah. Right, so
there's a catchy title.
Yeah, isn't it? Right, that might not have been what it was originally called. Just throwing that out there. But how interesting! Look, you've had a huge TV career. Massive. Right. From Lost all the way through to the latest Watchmen, Westworld. The list goes on. Ray Donovan, How to Get Away with Murder, which I loved. I loved your episodes on that.
Big shout out on Westworld as well.
Absolutely. Look, this list is incredible. Agent Carter as well, which was a very underrated, I feel, TV series. But
Haley Atwell,
indeed. So many Brits were in that. My friend Richard Short was in that. So many cool people were in that show. But then to go back to film, it's that one of those things, isn't it? You're on that trajectory of making TV. And people often go from film to TV these days. For you, it's the other way around. So it'd be interesting to talk about that. And obviously, when this came to you from Searchlight, were you already looking for a film to do, or was this actually? Because I mean, like you say, this could be a TV series. You could have really gone into his life and kept going.
Could still be.
Could still be, Stephen. Take this from us. This is just 10%. That's all we ask for.
Is that all?
And the directing credit for
bargains.
So talk us through that process of, like you say, it came to you. And this script.
I mean, look, here's the thing. Here's the real truth. I mean, there's you guys are very good at your jobs. You have a way of facilitating.
Thank you.
Candor that
I don't know how
that I probably will, in hindsight, regret. But as I said, I fell in love with movies, right? It never occurred to me to I never thought about TV directors or directing as it related to TV.
Yes.
And so what happened was I made my first film in Canada earlier than my teacher ate my homework. In 1995, I made my first film, which is called Soul Survivor, and it opened Critics Week at Cannes and did a whole bunch of festivals and I got representation as a result of that. And I was about to do my second film at New Line when I will try to, for the purposes of this podcast, be super brief. But I got kind of recruited, if you will, by Damon Lindelof, who ended up, who wrote and created Lost and Watchmen. And he and I had worked together and became friendly. And so when he did Lost, he called me right as I was in early prep on this movie. And then he introduced me to JJ Abrams, and JJ
kind of bad intro.
No, not a bad intro. And JJ can be very, very
Not the
persuasive.
most horrible one.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And so what happened was I was trying to cast this movie and I was having difficulty casting. I couldn't find the right person. And in that haze of confusion, JJ kind of said, look, I'm doing this show in Hawaii and, you should come and work on the show with us. And I was like, yeah, but I'm doing this movie. And he goes, really? How's it going? And I'm like, well, I'm kind of struggling a bit with casting. And he was like, yeah, I've been there. Tell you what, why don't you just come to Hawaii, do one episode? It'll clear your head. You'll go back. You'll hit the movie fresh. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. I go to Hawaii. I do an episode. The show is not even started to air. It's first season. And I love Hawaii. And I love the material and I love the cast. And it's just a good vibe. And I go back to LA and my agents are like, you really should kind of, stick with this JJ dude. And, the movie, we're not feeling good about the movie. And I consulted with my wife, and my family is the most important thing to me. And so almost every decision I've ever made, or in terms of the trajectory of my career, has been predicated on how it works for my family. And my wife and I thought, we had 2 young kids, and we thought, oh yeah, Hawaii is a great place to kind of, hang out for a bit. And
Hawaii not.
Hawaii not. And so we moved there, and 6 years of my life elapsed in the twinkling of an eye, and our kids were there, and one of our third child, our daughter, was born there. And then once I was on that kind of in that trajectory, as soon as Lost was over, JJ had another show he wanted me to produce and direct and in LA. So we moved to LA, and I was looking for movies the whole time, but I pretty picky and didn't really find anything that spoke to me. And in the meantime, other offers were coming in for TV that was really kind of fascinating. Like you mentioned How to Get Away with Murder. I'm like, I have an opportunity to work with Viola Davis. Of course I'm going to say yes. And so on and so on. And it wasn't until Chevalier came through the digital space that I was like, wow, I haven't mentioned this, but so apart from all the macro elements of the Chevalier story that are intrinsically fascinating, Joseph Bologna came from a Caribbean island, Guadeloupe, and then went to Paris when he was about 10. I was born in Jamaica. I'm not wearing this cap just, at random. I was born in Jamaica.
You waited 23 minutes into the interview for that one.
Well, I served it up. You guys didn't pick up on it.
Well, we would have, but
I registered it. Yeah.
So, and then I left Jamaica when I was 12 and went to high school and university in England. And so there were many kind of aspects about that outsider kind of trajectory that on a personal level spoke to me, and that I felt I understood and could bring something specific to, because I had in a way lived it. I had emerged far less accomplished from my experience than Joseph Bologna, but nonetheless understood that path in some way. And so for all those reasons, Chevalier felt like the right one to do.
So talking about the cast, Kelvin and Lucy, they're such an incredible pair in this movie, and I sort of already mentioned on the show earlier, he's an incredible lead. She does something to Marie Antoinette we haven't seen before, which is to miraculously make her likable, despite being an incredibly unlikable sort of persona. How did you? First of all, it's kind of a 2-part question. How did the casting of those two sort of come about, and also how did you create such a human relationship between the two of them in terms of working with them in maybe prep, rehearsal, script discussions, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, look, again, directors take far too much credit. So the truth is, Kelvin was a no-brainer based on A, his prior body of work, B, his intuitive understanding of the interior landscape of this character. I'm sure he shared with you that he comes from a family of jazz musicians, very prominent in New Orleans. So he grew up suffused in the world of music and understood the psyche of a musician. But beyond that, and he probably mentioned this to you too, the very first meeting I ever had with him, I was like, so here's the thing, man, you're going to have to learn how to play the violin because I don't want to shoot with a lot of cuts. There's not going to be a stunt double. And I personally think that audiences today are too sophisticated. The minute I cut to a close-up of hands or I'm on somebody's back, they're going to know it's not you, and it's going to take them out of the movie, and it's going to be completely antithetical to this whole immersion philosophy that I previously articulated. And so you're going to have to learn how to play the violin because I'm going to shoot long, unbroken takes as a way of A, immersing the audience, and B, telling the audience subtextually that this is all you and that they should connect to and with you. This is not a stunt double. And he was like, well, that's a lot. And I'm like, yeah. And while we're on that topic, the same is true of the fencing. There's not going to be a stunt double either. You got to learn how to fence.
Yes.
So he dedicated himself, man. He did 6 hours a day, 6 months before we started shooting, getting himself ready with violin coaches so that I could shoot the movie the way I wanted to shoot the movie. And so for all of those reasons, he was just like the only person. And I can't imagine anyone else in that role. And he just was incredible.
Yes.
And then Lucy just totally kind of got the kind of landscape of an ally and how kind of layered and complex that can be. And she is just such an amazing talent. Like Lucy was, the first conversation I had with her about Marie Antoinette was like, look, so you're about to do, if you choose to come and play with us, this is going to be the most thankless kind of invitation you've ever received because Marie Antoinette is a very well-trafficked road. And how are you going to find a new iteration for this character? And somehow she understood the mandate of the movie and the mandate of the role in this particular version of events and found a way to kind of carve out a new niche and a new kind of version of Marie Antoinette. And I just think she's incredible. And so again, but at a certain point, once you get past the casting of these people and you create a context or you kind of build a context for them to operate in, the rest is all them, their talent and their focus and their dedication and their hard work. And you just, hope that you don't mess up your half of it, which is to, capture it visually with the tools.
Yes. And you throw in Samara and Marton in there as well, and you've got this incredible cast. We haven't even mentioned some of the others as well.
And Ronke, by the way.
Yes.
Ronke, Nanon. She's, obviously not in the movie a lot, but boy, she I don't know, she really touches me.
And Sion Clifford, she was in a movie I produced as well, Serial Killer's Guide to Life.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's super.
She's amazing.
Yeah, she's really great. She's really great. So talk us through your, like, when you get to set, what do you like to do? If first thing in the morning, will you bring the actors in to rehearse? Will you talk through your DP? Talk us through it, just a little bit about maybe the first hour when you get to set of what you actually do.
Wow. Okay. You want to go granular?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Sand grains.
All right. So the first thing you got to know is the version of Chevalier's story that we wanted to tell was the story of a musical revolutionary, meaning someone who evolves and grows. He starts wanting to be part of Marie Antoinette squad and posse, and he emerges leading 1,000-man all-black battalion in the Revolutionary War that ultimately culminates in the beheading of his really good friend, Marie Antoinette. So something big had to have happened internally in Joseph between those two poles, right? Mm-hmm. So musical revolutionary. I mentioned I came from Jamaica. We have our own musical revolutionary, Bob Marley, and I am completely, everything I do, discernible or not, is informed by my proximity to that legacy. So every day on the call sheet started with a Bob Marley quote.
Wow.
So nice.
My process is I show up, and my first AD, whom I haven't mentioned, but who is amazing, Richard Fox, camera operator, DP, and Karen, we all assemble half an hour early every day. And the first thing we do is we talk about the Bob quote and how it's going to guide us through the day. Then we talk about the work of the day and how we're going to organize ourselves and approach it and how we're going to start. That's day one. Day two, by day two, we now have dailies from day one, and we talk about what worked, what didn't work, what we liked, what we didn't like, what we can improve on. But it's that nucleus of us, that squad, that, football team.
Yes.
And every day begins that way. And everyone can say what the rule is. Everyone can voice an opinion as long as we relate to and with each other respectfully. There are nothing is, people can go, hey man, that shot you were talking about setting up, it's so boring. I saw it already. You're repeating yourself. Let's do something different. And I will literally fall on my knees with gratitude and go, thank you for saving me from my baser instincts. So every day just kind of begins with us kind of connecting with each other in that way. And we kind of act out the scene.
Wow.
Before the actors get there, we kind of act out our version of the scene. So when the actors show up, I kind of go, hey, I was giving this some thought. It kind of felt like this could be the shape of the scene, but no one has to do anything that I just talked about. If you want to just stand stock still and not move, that's what we'll do. But this was my first crack at it. How do you guys feel? And in a lot of cases, they go, oh, that sounds good, or that works, that feels comfortable. Yeah, that's sort of what I was thinking. And sometimes, specifically, I'll give you a very specific example. Towards the end of the movie, before Joseph does his final concert, he's sitting alone at the venue in a chair, and Marie Josephine, his lover, shows up, and they have a scene. At first, because I was so interested in the fluidity of the camera, I was like, so Kelvin, maybe you're over here, and Samara, you come in and you do this and you do that. And Kelvin was like, I don't know. I just feel like I'd just be sitting in a chair for this scene. I was like, okay, that's cool. Actually, never thought about that. Okay, let's do that. That's how you feel comfortable. That's where you feel like you're going to best inhabit this moment and this character and portray this moment and in the way that this character would. That's why you're the actor. And
actor intuition, yeah.
Yeah, and that's how we ended up shooting that scene. That's how that scene came to be.
So just to bookend this question, because I'd be interested in the other side of that, is, so were there any pickup days that were maybe allowed for in the schedule or not allowed for, but that you thought, okay, all of this is amazing, but there's one or two bits here and there that I feel like we need to either add a moment or maybe we can reshoot this in a different way because of how we've shot the rest of the movie now. Was there any moments like that where you sort of came back to it?
Well, if I could reshoot the movie, I would. But no, not have a single schedule, not a single day. During the body of the film, it's COVID times, right? And so that was an additional layer of difficulty. And so the approach of Marie Antoinette to the venue in the final act of the movie, I shot it once during the body of the production schedule, and I didn't have enough background. I just didn't have enough people, because a bunch of people fell off because they tested positive and could not be in that group.
Yeah, and you can't just put crew members in, can you? You can't just go, you guys go, but this is costumes and time and prep. Yeah,
exactly, totally. And different zones, if you recall, from pandemic language, right? So I tried to shoot it anyway. I tried to be a good soldier and kind of figure out tighter angles and different coverage, but I wasn't happy with it. And it was, we're trammeling towards the climax of the movie. We had to get it right. And so we were able to find room within the body of the schedule to go back to that location and tackle it a second time. Right. And that was, other than that, that was all that, our kind of budget and our schedule allowed us to do. But, as you guys are almost certainly aware, Woody Allen builds into the budgets of his movies a month of reshoots for every single movie. And so
it makes sense.
I would love to. I would have loved to have had that opportunity, but no.
Maybe in the future. Yes.
Do you want to ask a last question, Giles?
Yeah,
We're gonna
honestly,
wrap this up.
thank you so much for chatting to us as well. We could talk for so much longer. We know you've got limited time today. So look, in terms of that little bit, that question, that advice for a director coming up now who's trying to get the first film made or get the second film or move into TV, what do you think worked for you and maybe what didn't, either one of the two, just to help our listeners out there?
I think that, first of all, advice is a fool's game because everybody's journey is individual.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, obviously, I'm a voracious consumer of directors and, their interviews and what they've said, and I scan them relentlessly for clues about my own path. So, having acknowledged both of those things, the most honest thing I can say is you have to find material that you can connect with. If you can connect with that material in a way that feels personal to you and specific to you, then, and that can be in any way, whether it's just visually, technically, or emotionally, or narratively, or any of those, any way in that makes this feel like there is a connection that you have with that material, you will almost certainly do a better job than if you were just taking a gig for the sake of taking a gig. So I would say try to hold out. Try to hold out for the thing that is special to you, and you will for sure do a great job at that, and it will open other doors. And let's say, in the sake of, for the sake of complete transparency, let's say it doesn't work out and lead to other things. At least you won't be left with that nagging feeling of, my God, not only did it not open other doors, but I bartered a portion of my internal real estate, my soul's real estate, to do this. And now I feel doubly bad about myself. Yeah. So the best insurance about that is, like, I did something that I felt was honest and true to me. It didn't hit. Oh, well, at least I did something that felt honest and true to me.
As long as it's your burning passion, for sure. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Amazing. And to end this on a Bob Marley quote, truth is, everybody's going to hurt you. You've just got to find the ones worth suffering for.
Oh,
there we go.
Nice. I love it.
Perfect for filmmaking, right? Perfect
I love
for
it.
filmmaking.
I love it.
Stephen, it's been an absolute pleasure, and all the success in the world to the movie. It's a fantastic piece.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for this interview, and thank you for your kind words. Truly appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you, Stephen. Have a great afternoon. Take care.
You as well.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.
Well, there you go. That was Stephen Williams. How amazing was he? So much fantastic advice. I really liked how he met JJ Abrams and those on-set moments that he has in the morning. So many things that you can take with you for when you're next on set there. That was absolutely brilliant.